Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again with another video, and this is the new and improved Canon 70-300 f4 to 5.6 USM telephoto lens. And this has been out for a year or two. I was actually hesitant to buy this because I own the first version of this lens, and for lack of a better phrase, that lens was straight ass. It had terrible autofocus, the build quality was suspect, and the image just wasn't a very good image coming out of camera. But with the improvements that they have made on this, is this the best telephoto lens for under $500? Let's talk about it. So a lens like this, in my opinion, is more of a photography lens as opposed to a videography lens. I dabbed more in videography than I do in photography. But that being said, a good telephoto lens has a lot of really good uses for photo and a couple for video, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. But let's talk about some of the features of this lens. So again, starting off with the focal length, we're talking 70-300. Now that's 70-300 on a full frame camera, and this is an EF mount, so cameras that take EF or EFS lenses can use this, as well as there's a bunch of adapters, so this can be easily adapted to cameras that don't. But for me, I shoot on a Canon 90D as well as a Canon M50 and a T6i, and so for those cameras I'm actually getting more like 112 to 400 millimeter, which is awesome because I'm getting more reach out of my lens. And again, f4 to f5.6 is not the fastest as far as telephoto lenses go, but that's actually a pretty good start. Again, for shooting wildlife and things like that, you're going to be outside anyway, so 5.6 being the max aperture, that's actually not bad for outside. If you're doing wedding photography and things like that, that might be the trickiest point to use a lens like this, because you can't always control the light and places like that. Again, if you're taking wedding photos outside, not a big deal, but say you're in the reception afterwards and they got the lights down low and things like that, that's when you're going to run into problems, especially on a crop sensor camera. And other features, the image stabilization is actually fantastic. I'm so glad. It's a must that telephoto lenses have image stabilization, and honestly there's a lot of expensive L series lenses and premium lenses from other companies that still don't offer image stabilization, and those lenses can be 2 or even 3 times more than this one. So the fact that this added the image stabilization, that's fantastic. Again, for when you're shooting all the way out at 300 and you need to snap you know, that rare bird or whatever the case it is, for shooting wildlife, having that image stabilization, and even shooting moving subjects. Shooting sports is another thing that I will probably use this for, and I suspect that I can get some really good shots, especially when it comes to using my 90D with an image stabilized lens like this. Another new addition is this LCD screen on the top, and the LCD screen, it's a pretty nifty little addition to it. Again, one of the cool things about it is it will convert the distance if you're using a crop sensor camera, so you can look at the LCD lens and see the focal length that you're actually getting as opposed to what the lens is telling you, because again, these lenses, when they're talking about focal length, they're talking about in relation to a full frame camera. So if you're using a crop sensor, or if you adapt this to like micro four thirds, then it will tell you the length that you're actually getting, which is super cool. Another feature of this lens is the autofocus. This is using that nano technology, whatever they call it. Basically, it works in conjunction with cameras that, say for instance, have dual pixel autofocus, or even cameras that don't. The focus motors in this lens are super fast, and so even on my T6i, especially in the photography. I'm getting snappy focus when I'm moving from area to area. If I'm zooming in and out, the autofocus on this is nearly instantaneous, and that is fantastic. Again, when you're trying to get the shot, if you need to pop off a photo very quickly, you know, you can really take advantage of that super fast autofocus so you can get those photos in the nick of time. Again, a huge improvement over the version 1 of this. When I would try to focus in on my subject with that lens, the focus motor was really loud, and you can feel the whole lens just kind of just sputter, and it was a very unpleasant experience. But this, with this technology, this is fantastic. The autofocus is nice and smooth. Even when I'm shooting video, the way it racks focus looks very natural. And yeah, the autofocus is 10 out of 10 now, as opposed to the 1 or 2 out of 10 that it was before. So huge props for improving the autofocus motor in this lens. Some other features, using the lens itself, the zoom ring, it feels a little stiff, but I suspect that will loosen as time goes on as I use this lens. The manual focus ring on it, though, is right now buttery smooth. Like, it moves really nice and feels really good, so I can rack focus confidently if I'm doing it manual with photo or video on this lens. Again, the focus ring, the manual focus ring, feels super nice on this. Another cool thing that this has, it also has a lock button on the side. So if you're dealing with your zoom and things like that, you can hit the lock button, and then you can feel confident that you won't like hit or bump into the lens and mess up your focus or your focal length. And so that's really cool. I don't really use it myself, but it's nice to know that it's there. A quick word on the build quality. The build quality is much improved over its older brother. It still feels not quite as solid as an L series lens, but the plastic on it is very high quality. Shaking it, you can't really feel the innards move as much as you could with the version 1 of this lens. I remember if I gave it a quick shake, like the way the insides would move around just made me feel like the lens was broken or something on the inside was broken, but nope, they're just like that. And so they really tighten things up. Everything feels a lot more tight and solid on this. It's a heavier lens. I can't remember the exact weight. I'll try to put it on the screen here, but again, that doesn't bother me, especially for a lens like this. If I'm going to be using it to capture sports or capture wildlife, that extra weight just gives an extra layer of stabilization, which compared to the stabilizer on the lens, again, it's going to help me get smooth shots without any motion blur and things like that. So overall, the build quality of this lens is greatly improved over its older brother as well. Okay, so again, the final thoughts on this lens. This lens is actually kind of fantastic. Again, I was shooting some really good portraits with this lens, catching some action. It catches action pretty well, and again, with the weight of it and the stabilization, in conjunction with everything that your actual camera can do, you should be able to get some really good stable shots as far as catching birds in flight and catching people running and things like that. This lens is definitely going to do that for you. Again, the cons, the low light performance isn't the best on this lens. I would wish that the aperture could be better. Even if it was f4 all the way through, I think that would be a huge improvement over the version 1 of this lens. But again, they improved so many things that this definitely feels like an upgrade. Even though the focal length and the aperture range is exactly the same, everything else on this lens has been improved. The optics feel improved, so the image looks clearer and cleaner. I didn't notice things in the old lens. I noticed issues like chromatic aberration, things like that I don't see in this lens. It just gives you a nice clean image for a cheap price. In other words, would I recommend this lens? Absolutely. If you're looking to upgrade from, say, the version 1 of this, there's two earlier versions of the 70-300 that I would just steer clear from. I would say if you're on the budget side, if you're just beginning, the first telephoto lens you should get is the 55-250 kit lens, and that produces a similar image to this. Again, image quality wise, I still think this is better. I actually traded that lens towards the purchase of this one, so that was really nice. And again, I don't regret it at all. This definitely feels like an upgrade. Of course, I got a longer reach with this lens as well. So I will put links in the description if you want to check this lens out. It's going currently for about $500, but you can get it used. Again, look at the links and check the used options. You can find them as low as like $450 and even $400. And again, I definitely think it's worth that, considering that some of the older L series 70 to 200s are still going for about $1,000. So to get a nice quality lens like this at half the price is definitely worth the buy. So click the links, and if you see it, pick it up. Alright guys, so I do believe that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What do you guys think about the 70 to 300 if you own it? How does it compare to some of the other lenses you've had in the past? If you like this content, go ahead, hit the like button, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You will be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out.